Today, Mentoring Writers welcomes our first podcast interviewee of 2021, and I am delighted that she has joined me via Zoom. The lady in question is not only an award-winning author, but also an award-winning entrepreneur within the writing world. Her name is Paula Sheridan, who, along with her husband Ken, heads up an organisation titled the Page Turners Awards. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you, Anne.
Now, I met you through your organisation, the Page Turners Awards, but as you'll gather from behind, I'm an historical fiction lover and writer myself. So I want to start our interview by talking about you, the writer. Now, as Paula Wynne, you have written a series of historical fiction books, plus a prequel, which led you to winning the 2017 Booker's People's Book Prize for The Grotto Secret, which was the second book in the series titled Torquil Trilogy. Can you share with our listeners how you felt winning that award and how you think it changed your life?
Well, first of all, Anne, thank you so much for having me. It's delightful to be here and to be talking to you today. But regarding the Grotto Secret and winning the prize, it was actually quite funny because it was in the summer of 2017, and I had just been visiting my son and doing some shopping in England because at the moment I'm living in Spain, and I was actually at Gatwick, and I was on my way back home, and I got a phone call to say that I've sort of a finalist in the People's Book Prize Award, and could I come along next week to to the award ceremony in London? And I was like, yes, of course. And then I put the phone down thinking, I'm on my way home, I'm literally gonna unpack, repack and come back. So at first I didn't know I had won. It was very exciting, but on the night it was fantastic being there. And when they actually told me that the Grotto Secret had won, I was just I think for a few seconds I just sat there sort of thinking, who's that? And then realized, oh my God, it's me, because it kind of just doesn't ring true for a few seconds. You just kind of don't believe it. But when I got up on the stage, I was absolutely tongue-tied. I just couldn't get my words out. My tongue was glued. I couldn't really, I had planned this wonderful speech, as I'm sure everybody does if they think they're going to win. But it was very exciting because Sir Frederick Forsyth had, he was giving me my award, and he gave me this wonderful statue, lovely little statue. And when I was up there and doing my speech, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if I could, because everybody who was there was all sort of from the literary world. And I was wondering if I could do a book awards where, we have something very unusual and very unique. And this is what we're going to talk about later with Page Turner Awards. So the idea, even though I was just winning an award there, it kind of then struck me that I would like to do something similar, which is what went on to become Page Turner Awards, which what I'll talk to you about in a bit. But yeah, it was very exciting. It was sort of, I was dumbstruck, excited, all of that, in seconds. You don't realize it kind of just hits you in seconds, and it sort of flows over you. But it was a wonderful evening, I have to say.
Yeah, and quite some Frederick Forsyth, of course. Whoa,
I know. I know. It was wonderful.
Can I ask, why do you think it was the second book that won the prize rather than, say, the first or the third?
Well, you see, at the time, I had written the first book, and then I was writing the second and the third, and then I actually wrote a book which is the prequel. So the prequel is a book called Elixir, and then I had written the Grotto Secret as the first, the Sacred Symbol as the second, and then the Lunar Legacy as the third. But I was in the middle of writing the second and the third, so they weren't up for an award. But then the first one, which I suppose technically is the first, but it's actually a prequel, was a different book. So I think it was just because that book was out, that book was there, it was getting lots of reviews, lots of, it was on the best-selling list on Amazon for quite a long time and kept coming back. And so a lot of people were saying good things about it. So maybe because of that, that's the book that was current in there. And since then, I haven't sort of been entering many awards. I have been trying to get to enter awards, but I've been so busy with all my business interests, so I kind of haven't got there. But I do want to go back down the route of entering my books in more awards.
So having got this experience of writing a trilogy of books, I know that there are some listeners out there who could perhaps do with some advice. Have you got any good advice you could perhaps pass on to our new and developing writers who might want to follow your lead and create, something similar? And, how do you think they should approach such a challenge? Because it is a challenge.
It is a challenge, yeah. I mean, I didn't actually start out to write the first book. I just had, when my husband and I were looking at the property we live on now, our home, I got this idea. We live in this beautiful valley in sort of north of Malaga in Spain, in the mountains. And I was looking down. We actually came to look at the house for the first time. And I was looking down the valley, and this character came to me, and it was a Spanish girl. But also she was sort of living in the valley, but it was sort of in, 1492 time. For some reason, it was definitely 1492. And it was around about that time. And she just came to me, and it was so vivid. And I had thought of writing this one story, but when I was writing it, I realized there was so much more she had to say. There was so much more story she had in her. And also I did something very different. I wrote it with a historical thread plus a modern thread. So you see what's happening in the modern day, and you see what's happening in 1492, but you see how the two weave together. So it took a long time to do, and it was complicated because I had to keep making sure that the two of them, there was connection. It wasn't just like two different stories that I should have written two different books. So I had to keep making sure they were connected. But when I was writing the first one, I didn't intend to write it as a trilogy. So I think my lesson that I would have learned if I had realized that this was going to be a trilogy, I would have taken probably more care in developing certain characters to have longevity and to be in the whole trilogy and to go through the whole series. So I think if anybody is planning a series, then, do their research, do all of their character notes. You make sure their character bio is complete, but knowing what that character is going to do in the next part of the series as they go through the series, whether it's a trilogy or a long series. But if a writer like me kind of stumbles upon this fact that, hang on, I've got the story and this character is good enough and could actually go on to different stories, I think then you just have to kind of like, what I did is just really say, okay, how can I now take this character into another book and into a third book? So I kind of made it a trilogy, but if I ever have the time, what I'd like to go back and have one particular character, have a whole series of just that one character and all the adventures, historical adventures, the one particular character goes on. So I think essentially the advice is make sure that the character, if you're thinking of a series, make sure that the character has got a lot of stories to tell and a lot of things that they can experience and go through, and challenges and growth that the character can have going through the series. And if you don't plan on it and then decide to do it, then make sure that, exactly the same thing, that the character can sustain the whole series. I think that's the most important.
Good advice. Now, obviously, like me, you have a love of history, but you also have a love of thrillers, because you bring that through into your other writing. Now, I have to say that as a historical writer myself, I am in awe of the late Dorothy Dunnett. I've never come across many people who've heard of her, yet she has a great following. And she wrote some terrific historical fiction novels. And what really impressed me about her was the ways that she interwove true facts with a fictional character and fictional events. And there was something about her writing that I think really got me going down the road of historical fiction. And I think that's why I love it. So do you use real events when you are writing, or are they all fictional?
No, I definitely use true events. I mean, the Grotto Secret, for example, is 1492, and it involves this particular character. starting out, the whole the Spanish Inquisition, everything that was happening. So a lot of that particular first series was fictional, but set in a time when lots of real stuff was going on. So I used a lot of real stuff going on. And then because as I was saying a few minutes ago, this character was so strong, what I kind of realized is that this character could really do, lots of good things in further series. So then in the second book, which is The Sacred Symbol, the character actually she actually goes down to, to the coast, and she ends up meeting Christopher Columbus. And then there's a whole, other adventure, because he is just setting off. He's just about to set off on his adventure before he discovers the New World. So of course, they didn't know at the time that he was about to discover the New World, and he didn't know that it was going to be the New World. He was just setting off on this adventure to find a new route to, to the Spice Lands. So then what I actually did is I did a massive amount of research, although my own history told me, about Christopher Columbus, but I had to do a lot of research to make sure that everything in the story was as true as it could be. But of course, in real life, she doesn't meet Christopher Columbus, because he actually meets her, and there's a little sort of liaison with him, and, things go on. So that's not true, but I made sure everything else was true. And he didn't actually, at the time, he had a wife, but she was, somewhere else in Spain. She wasn't there then. So you can kind of, with historical fiction, you can kind of, weave some fictional facts in, but I do think it's important that you have as much information of either the setting or the time period, or if you are looking for a particular character, like in my case it was Christopher Columbus, and the other books go on to have other fictional characters. Like in the third book, I go on to to talk about the very famous Queen Isabella, and again I did a lot of research on sort of her period and time that she lived in. Alhambra Palace. I went up to Alhambra Palace. Luckily, I only live an hour away, so I went up there, did lots of research on it. And again, the same character then meets, Queen Isabella, and there's a whole lot of stuff, that adventure she goes on with them. But again, I made sure that all those historical facts, as far as I could, were correct. But I just made sure that my character was fictional, but whatever the thing that she was doing and the setting and everything else was all completely and utterly correct. So yeah, it's a hard balance, but I think if you have a love for historical fiction, I think you can do it quite easily if you make sure that you don't, as long as you don't change big facts and big things, like Christopher Columbus didn't sail in 1492, he sailed in 1495 or something, or whatever. If you just make sure that you have the timings right and most of the important facts right, then I think you can quite easily weave fiction into true historical facts. So it's fun, and it's very exciting to do that.
Yes, I found that when reading Dorothy Dunnett. I mean, I've been reading her books now for 40 years. I still read them, still enjoy them. Apart from writing fiction, you also have written other books, and these are books which offer advice and assistance for writers. But on top of that, you've been a busy lady. You've created 2 fabulous websites, one which brings books to readers, and the other which helps educate writers in the craft of writing. So bearing in mind all the calls you have upon your time, including the Page Turners Awards, what's your work schedule like? I mean, when you're trying to write, how do you balance your Page Turners Awards scheme, your Book Lover website, your Writing Goals website, and make that run alongside you wanting to achieve your writing goals?
It is a balance, and on top of all of that, there's also living in Spain. My husband and I rescue cats a lot, purely because there's just we have a dog, and we've rescued a couple of dogs too, but luckily managed to find them homes. But we also find that sometimes it's a very sad case where you see cats dumped at rubbish bins, and we just we just absolute softies. We really are putty, you know, in these cats' hands, and we rescue cats. So last year we rescued loads of cats, the year before loads of cats. So in between all of what you were saying, it's also balancing the cats. But we rescue some of them, we've kept, but what we do is we try and find homes for them and put them through a charity and get homes for them. But it isn't easy, and it is it's sometimes I think you have to be very disciplined. And what I find, you know, all writers are different. I'm very much a morning writer. I find by the end of the day, my brain has just got so much business stuff whizzing through it, you know, with Book Lover and my writing goals site where I review writing books and, you know, and Page Turner Awards, and then the house, the family, what's for dinner, you know, sitting down with my husband to watch a film, the cats need feeding and whatever. So by the end of the day, I couldn't string a sentence of words together. So I find that if I get up early in the morning, and I am luckily a morning person, in times when I'm on holiday or my husband and I are having a Christmas break, then I make sure that I take the time to regenerate myself and let myself sleep in. You know, sleeping into 7 is a sleep in for me, or sleeping into 8 is a sleep in for me. But you know, most mornings that, you know, if I'm suddenly up at 5 or 6 and I'm awake, and the house is quiet, I take advantage of that. And I think if a writer is in the same kind of position, whether they got kids or families or whatever, if they find that the house is quiet and it's a good quiet time to write, they just find a little space. I just sneak down the passage where the cats can't hear me, and you know, I just sneak down the passage, and then I just put my computer on and I just start writing, because I find that very early in the morning it's a good time to write. I also find that, you know, sometimes if my husband and I normally walk the dog together, but if for some reason I'm walking the dog on my own, and I walk sort of, you know, in the countryside, that's another time where I sort of get inspiration. I either talk to myself and tell myself, this character's doing this, or, you know, I need to fix this problem or whatever. So I kind of go through those motions when I'm sort of out walking. But mostly it's my writing time is early in the morning, and then I have to develop my the rest of my time to write, you know, in between other things. And I'm lucky that my husband is a big rugby fan and a big football fan. So whenever he's watching rugby or football, quickly I jump onto the computer and I take advantage of that, you know, on the weekends, and I write then as well. So it is a juggle, but I think, you know, like most writers, everybody's got some, you know, work commitments, business commitments, you know, some kind of commitments. I think everybody just has to find the time that's best for them, when their brain is at the best, sort of most fruitful stage for creating words and creating characters and thinking of these things. So yeah, I think we all as writers find that as a juggle.
Yeah, I think it's a question of choosing what suits you as well
Exactly.
as juggling. Yes, I
Yeah.
agree. Now, your books are shared across all mediums. So can I ask you, do you hear from readers much? And if so, what sort of things do they say to you?
I do hear from readers a lot, especially because I've got Book Lover, which is like my sort of reader site. And what I do there is I help authors to promote their books. And I tell the readers about lots of book giveaways, or, you know, if I want people to review my books or authors' books, I do that. Yeah, I've had the one interesting comment I did have when The Grotto's Secret first came out. Somebody actually said to me that The Grotto's Secret, the villain, was as scary as Hannibal Lecter. So I was very pleased with that, because anybody else would say that sounds awful. That sounds like a bad review, but I was actually quite pleased. To me, that's a compliment. But I understand why. He was a particularly weird character, and I don't know why I wrote him and where he came from, but he was just there in my head, and he just kind of had to be put on paper. Another one also said to me that their trilogy reminded them of Bernard Cornwell's The Last Kingdom. So I was like, oh my God, wow. Especially now that I see on Netflix, it's a massive hit and a massive success. And in fact, I can't wait for the next series to be filmed. So when readers do contact me and say these things to me, it's very exciting. And now, because I didn't have a book published last year, because I was so involved with Page Turner Awards, I'm kind of getting pressure now, because a lot of my readers are saying, when's your next book coming out? We've heard that you got this one and that one. What's happening? So yeah, it kind of makes me realize, I got to kind of, kick myself and say to myself, find the time to write. Don't let the business and, all the other interests take up too much time. Find the time to write, because when it's almost like you, and you'll know this, Anne, because you've written so many books, it's almost like you have a promise to these readers. When you put out a first book and then a second and a third, they follow you. And because they follow you and they love your writing, it's like a promise that I will keep writing and I will keep giving you these stories that you love. And when you don't do it, it's kind of like I'm falling back on my promise. So yeah, you have to sort of keep writing if you can, but you've got to keep writing. But yeah, it's lovely to hear from readers, and I especially love it when they tell me things like, my my character is as scary as Hannibal Lecter. That was lovely.
So we all know about good and bad reviews, but there's always that one person who will just not like your work no matter what. So in this case, have you any advice to newly published authors about how they handle the bad remarks? Because I must admit, I have seen some comments on Facebook where there's been a new author and they've said, they've received all these bad trolls and what have you, and actually what really saddened me was one author came very close to committing suicide, a brand new author, and it was terrible, and the whole community actually gathered round and supported her. So one of the things I try and do through my podcasts and my blogs is to say, look, you've got to, in a way, grow a tough skin. You've got to be tough. How do you see it?
I see it pretty much the same. I think at first you have to have that rhino skin, as you were saying. You have to have a tough skin. All of our writing is like our babies. We all have, we've worked on this. It's been part of us, so deeply part of us. And then somebody says something horrible to us. It's almost like somebody saying to a mum that your baby's ugly. And that's really horrible. A mum would just hate that to be said, my baby's ugly. That's horrible. So it's very similar when somebody says it. But I think you have to try to get the rhino skin. You have to try. I think the most important thing I found is for the very few, if you know that you're a good writer and you know you've got good stuff coming out, for the very few who might not like it, because as you say, Anne, not everybody's going to like your work. Not everybody's going to like everything about your work. I think you have to just take pleasure and pride in the good ones, the good reviews, and look at those good reviews. If you get a bad one, go back straight away to the good ones and remind yourself about the good ones and what people have said about how good, your books are. Because that then reminds you that actually one person saying, or two people saying something not so good, it's that, it's not really so important because all of these others are saying such great things. So look at those, even, copy the review and have it as a little poster so that you can remind yourself, this is what somebody has said about my books. I mean, people have compared me to, the Bernard Cornwell, The Last Kingdom, or to Hannibal Lecter, the character Hannibal Lecter. So I take pride and pleasure in those important things and look on the positive side rather than saying, okay, I've had one or two bad reviews and, those aren't good. And I think every writer, that's what they have to do because, you always, as you said, you're always going to get somebody who's going to be, grumpy. You just got to kind of, my mom always had the saying about the salt over the, throw salt over your shoulder or some old saying, but it's probably similar to that. Rather take pleasure and pride in the good ones and leave the other ones and don't let them troll you, just forget about them. And especially on new social media like Facebook and Twitter, you just have to kind of just really put it behind you and not answer them, not look at them, not talk to them, not discuss them, because they are the kind of people who will just carry on and carry on and carry on. You just really have to ignore them and move on to the good ones and the positive ones.
Yeah, I so agree. I mean, the best one I got was for this one behind me, the Dear Friends, and I gave it to a lady who was recuperating to read. And when she gave it me back, I said, so what did you think? She said, you're a modern Jane Austen, aren't you? I said, I'll take it.
Oh,
Wow. That's
fantastic.
the best compliment that anybody could give a writer when they say
Yes,
that, yeah, you know, so there we
absolutely.
go.
Yeah.
Before we go on to talk about something which I know is very close to your heart, is there any other advice or suggestions you can offer that will help our listeners become better writers?
I think my first comment would be read in the genre that you're writing. So read as much as you can. For me, historical fiction and thrillers. So I read thrillers and I read historical fiction. If you're fantasy or science fiction or whatever your genre, romance, whatever, I think you need to read. For your own personal pleasure, you need to read as much as you can so that you kind of get the feeling, but also you learn. And this is what I find is I love it when I read a book and I'm learning from the book and I'm thinking, oh, this is fantastic. I love the way this person is writing, or I love this plot or this character. And I really want to become, and I want to try and become like this, whoever's written this book. So I think the first one would be read as much as you can for your personal pleasure in that particular genre. And I think my big obsession is also to read books on writing and get as much advice, to learn different writing techniques, because it's not just about, coming down, right, today I'm going to write a book, or I'm going to write these characters or whatever, and just write it. Very often it starts off that way, but as you go and grow and develop through your writing career, you really have to learn the different techniques, the different parts of a novel, because it's all broken up, how to create characters, how to create plots, and all of that comes from reading books about writing techniques. And I've learned so much from, I just chew these books up. I love them. I've learned so much from them, but I really do have an obsession. And that's why I started writinggoals.com, because I read so many very good books on, on various parts of writing a novel, of creating characters. And so I started wanting to share that information, that the stuff that I'd learned, I wanted to share with other writers. So I set up it's really just a blog about all the books that I've read. So I think it's quite important that writers learn as much as they can about the art of writing and how to improve their writing. And even I think when you're watching films, I mean, when I watch films and I love a film, I always say to myself, oh, I love the way they did that, or I love how that happens. And I think, and sometimes I want to go and sort of study that book from a point of how the whole story unfolds. So again, it's all about making sure that you learn the art of writing, and you absorb all of that and really be like a sponge and take it all in, because any of that kind of information is only going to help you as a writer, and it's only going to improve your writing and make your stories better.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I'm the same. When I absorb so much, this is what I do through mentoring writers. I want to share, exactly, because it's important. It's important.
Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about the Page Turners Awards. So it was through this organisation that you and I first met, and I will admit, I'm being honest here, that I was a little nervous when first asked about offering a mentoring prize. But I have to say that the process and the organisation of the PTA has certainly impressed me. And that's why I'm repeating the offer for the 2021 awards. Now, you've already hinted about where the idea you came up with, and obviously you and Ken worked well together on this. So would you like to tell our listeners more about the awards, as well as how new and developing writers, and probably even established writers, can benefit from joining in them this year? Over to you.
So firstly, Anne, I just wanted to say thank you so much for choosing two writers last year to mentor, and you're now mentoring them, and I really thank you for that, and for joining us this year. It's fantastic having someone like you on board, and with such a wealth of knowledge and so kind as to help these writers that you choose, that you've obviously chosen as the writers that you feel you want to help develop. So thank you for that. But yes, the Page Turner Awards, I mentioned it earlier when I got my award. What I did after Sir Frederick Forsyth, was wonderful having him to give me my award. I kind of thought I want to go and see what other awards are out there that I can put my own book into. And then I was sort of getting very close to having 2 and 3 books. So I thought, what can I do? And I did a lot of research, and I found a couple of things. First of all, I found that there weren't many awards that join unpublished writing, unpublished manuscripts, so a writing award, and joined up with a book award, which is published fiction or nonfiction, so published books and unpublished. And I kind of thought, why can't there be an award with both of them together? And there just doesn't seem to be anything out there. And then also I thought to myself, well, why also can't, if you have a writing award, why do they should just win something? I mean, a long time ago, I put some of my work into, some writing awards. And one time I, said, well done, you've got an honorable mention, and that's all you get. And I thought, why can't we, why isn't there an award out there, or an award, or many awards that would offer writers of unpublished fiction the chance to find a publisher, or the chance to find a writing mentor like you, or the chance to find a publishing deal, or an agent, a literary agent who, could represent them and take their writing to a publisher. And then also from a published book point of view, why aren't there any books out there? Most book awards just give you a stamp, a lovely little, little badge, that you can put on your book saying, I won this award, and a lovely little emblem like I got. But there weren't any that I could find, and there might be some that I couldn't find them, that were offering valuable prizes, like, the stuff that Page Turner Awards now offers, which is, audiobook productions, publishing packages for people who want to self-publish, high value prizes, PR campaigns, publicity campaigns. So I started writing to literary agents and publishers, saying, if this kind of book award was out there, writing award is out there, would you be interested in judging? And I was a bit bowled over, because they came back and said, great idea. Yes, I'll join in. And then I had, wonderful people like Anne Brady, who said the same thing. Yes, even though she was, sort of worried about it at first. Yes, I'll join in and mentor somebody. So I kind of started putting this together, and then it was just becoming so big and so much. I just said to Ken, you're going to have to help me. So I wrote him in and said, look, this is really what I want to do. And let's see if we can, we for the first year, we can't guarantee and promise anybody that we would be able to publish, or not we be able to publish them, or we be able to offer a publishing prize. But let's see what we can do. And as you know, and I mean, we were just so thrilled. 3 of our writers last year won literary representation. We got 5 of them were published. 13 offered an audiobook production. We just had such fantastic results, and then of course 5 of them got mentoring prizes, because you very kindly offered 1 writer, and then you found 2 that you wanted to offer. So we were just so thrilled with the successes we had and with the quality of writing. So we put this all together. We said we're going to try and see what happens. Even though we had good judges, we were holding thumbs, holding toes, making sure that, really we were trying to reach out to writers and say to them, look, we've got this awards, we've got these great judges, enter your work, just see what happens, even if you don't win, see what happens. And we have had such fantastic testimonials. A lot of writers, also because we're trying to be unique and do something different, we're offering them feedback, whether it's private feedback, or they can get feedback from an editor. And then they of course, if they enter now and they get the feedback, they can change. They don't have to, the first thing that they enter doesn't have to be, what the judges see. They can improve their work as they go along, and they can get comments. And by doing that, it's a learning process for the writer, but at the same time, their final work, by the time, the end of May comes and the judging starts in June, by that time, obviously they have to have everything on the site. So we're trying to do these things what we're calling optional extras. They don't have to do this. They can just enter and not take up these extra feedback things. So we're trying to make it unique, but at the same time helping writers. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of where it all began. And what we've achieved last year, we're really hoping to do better this year. Of course, you never know. You just never know, because you don't know what writing is going to come in, and you don't know what writing will attract the different judges. We've now got 20 odd judges who are all looking for writers. They are looking to publish writers, and in amongst those judges are literary agents who are looking to represent writers. And then we've got a whole lot of judges on, we've got a writing award, we've got a young writer, so we've got a whole lot of judges looking for young writers. We've got a writing mentorship award, as you know, and we've got you and 2 other very kind writing mentors who are offering a writing mentorship to writers. And then we have the Screenplay Award, and the Screenplay Award is for anyone who's got a script or a screenplay, or even for writers who have a book, a novel, and they want to turn it into a screenplay, because we have lots of film production companies, film producers. And I was so excited last year because Paul Michael Glaser from Starsky and Hutch, he said he was going to judge. So we've got Starsky and Hutch judging the Screenplay Award. And then, of course, then we've got the Book Award, which is for published. It can be traditionally published or self-published, and they all joining together, put their books in, and we offer them fantastic prizes. So we are just, from our first year, we never ever thought we would get to, to have such fantastic results. And for us, it's all about putting this, bevy of fantastic stories, beautiful writing in front of judges, and really hoping to see what comes next, what happens next. And now we're on that same journey, because we just won't know until it's all sort of until all the judging is taking place. So we won't know what happens. So it's very exciting for us, and we're really hoping for the best again this year.
No, wow, that's great. It's fantastic, I must admit. It really is. I shall, of course, be including links to the awards on all my social media and my websites. But
thank you.
Listeners can actually contact me for details at contact@mentoringwriters.co.uk, and also contact@ann-brady.co.uk. So there's 2 emails there. I will be putting it on not just Mentoring Writers, but the Ann Brady website as well. So we're okay. Now, before we finish our interview, I want to ask a couple more questions, something a bit more personal. So I want to go back to when you were a little girl. Can you remember that?
A long time ago.
So, when you were growing up, what did you want to be? Everybody asks this question.
Yes.
What did you want?
Probably a bit of a strange one. I mean, I think most little girls want to be a princess, or a fairy, or go off to, wonderful lands. And I think at one stage I might have wanted to be a fairy, because one of my aunts had this wonderful garden, and she had all these little gnomes, and then she always used to tell us these stories, before we went to bed, about these fairies. And I might have wanted to be a fairy. But what comes to me immediately, and maybe this was more my teenage years than my little girl years, is that I had the strange obsession that I wanted to be a rally driver. And not just a rally driver, I wanted to go across country, in the camel race, where they go across and they dive in dips and mud, and they go up and they slide down and they roll over, and all of these. And I don't know why that's come to me, and probably is my teenage years, but maybe it's, my brother, I've only had one brother, but I have one brother, but maybe it was something to do with, what he used to watch. I don't know, but I just remember having this teenage kind of feeling that I wanted to be a rally driver and travel the world, and the way to do it was to be, driving a rally car. But I think that sort of was quite quickly realized that I wouldn't be. But I think also one of the, you know, I was always writing stories, my own little funny little stories, you know, as a young child. And we had this thing, we had a dining room table which had obviously 4 legs, and we used to turn it upside down, and the top of the 4 legs, we used to spin it around. And my older sister and I used to say to my younger sister and brother, we're on the magic carpet, so now you have to imagine. And we used to tell them stories, and we used to spin it around and say, right, we're flying off to wherever. And each time we would tell them a different story about where we were going, and we'd make up the weirdest things I can imagine. And then I started realizing that actually I wanted to tell those stories, because my younger brother and sister, of course, they would just look at us in awe and just, you know, these worlds we created for them. And I'm surprised I'm not writing fantasy or science fiction. I'm writing historical fiction. But I think that's what I wanted to do is from very young, even though I had this rally driver thing going on in my head, I think I kind of wanted to say, you know, I wanted to be a writer. And I remember when I was 18, I'm from South Africa, and I lived in South Africa at the time. And I wrote off to England to get this book, which was, you know, this writing course that I could, you know, it would be sent off, you know, to me in weekly or installments. And I got all my books, and I sat down, and I mean, those days without the internet and all the stuff we could do today, I'd have to write in the book, you know, all my bits, and then send off my little assignments back to England. And it was so exciting as an 18-year-old getting this writing course, and of course what we can do now. And, you know, with this, you know, the obsession that I have with writing, that's probably where it came from. But yeah, I think that's, you know, maybe it's always been there to be a writer. And, you know, and I'm glad it's always there, because I love stories. I love watching stories in film, and I love reading, and I love telling stories. But then, you know, I also have this other thing in my head that, you know, maybe on my bucket list, I might go off one day and do a rally drive somewhere. I just hope I don't crash.
I must admit, while you were talking about that, I had a flashback. Some years ago, when my late husband was alive, he took me to a place called Croft, which is a race course up the north of England. And he wouldn't go in the race car. I went in the race car. It was it was ordinary cars, but souped up ordinary cars. And I went with a professional driver, and got strapped in, and he took me around this track. We must have been doing, I don't know, 150, 160 miles an hour around this track, being chased by a police officer in a police car, believe it or not. All legal, because it was a special day. And I loved every minute of it. But
oh, wonderful.
It was ace. And then we swapped places, and he let me take the car around. I think I got it up to 120. That was the maximum.
Wow. That must have been a bit frightening at that speed.
No, but it just came back to me. But going on the bends and everything, it just brought it all back then when you were talking about it. So
a nice memory I've given you.
The other thing I did the same day was I actually drove a 40-tonner truck. And
ooh.
Yeah, and I got in, and it was the best experience about it was when you sat in it, the seat adjusted automatically. It was like on an air thing. You sat on it, and then it adjusted to your height for the pedals. And we set off. I mean, I only got into second gear because it was a short run, and it started to rain. And he said, I need to reach over and flick the wipers on. I said, which one is it? He says, it's there on the right. So I flicked it on and kept driving. And he said, how did you do that? I said, I drive old cars, because my late husband had a collection of old motor cars. So I was used to double declutch and everything being all over the place. So yeah, but a wonderful experience. But you brought it all back just then.
Yeah, it sounds fabulous.
It was great. So looking back over your writing career, if you could change anything you've ever done over the last few years, what would it be?
I would probably start building a reader list much earlier than I did, and I think and the reason for that is because when you first get your book, sort of published, whether you do mainstream publishing or self-publishing, I think either one, you have to really have some kind of reading, sort of reader platform and a reader following. Eventually, because I kind of sat back thinking, oh, who's going to buy my book? My family, these kind of people. It doesn't happen. You really have to have a reader following. Eventually, when I did, I started to look, and it took so long to build a reader list. And now what I do is I teach writers that I work with and authors that I work with. I teach them how to do it. And I've got a free download, which I'm very happy to give you to share with your writers, which is a set of 3 books on how to market their books and how to promote their books. But even so, Anne, I come from a marketing background. I was always I did marketing for Oxford University Press. I did PR for, I was a PR for the children's book section. And I had the experience of PR and marketing, but when it comes to my own books, I was like stumped for a while, and I was like, oh God, what do I do? I've got to get these books sold. And so I think one thing that I would definitely do is I would encourage, whether it's somebody who's always going to only be a writer and only go down the traditional and the mainstream publishing route, or if they're going to self-publish. And I think especially if it's for anybody who wants to be an indie author and self-publish, I think it's very, very important that you build a readers list, and there's lots of ways you can do it. And as I said, I'm very happy to give you this free download. They can read up and find out how to do it. But if you have a reader platform, it makes everything so much easier to get reviews, to ask people for advice. Should I start with this chapter or this chapter? Because sometimes you, as a writer, thinking, well, I really think this chapter is good, but could it be, this one could be better? Or should I do it in third person or first person? And both could have, the advantages and the disadvantages, in fact, could be equal. So it's good to have a real good following of readers that you can ask these things, and or even your book cover. What do you think of this book cover? Or what do you think of, various things, various parts of, information that is so important, because you want to find out from what they would tell you as a reader, because you're a reader, but you're also a writer. So you kind of, because you're wearing 2 hats, it's important to know what your readers would think. So probably my most important piece of advice, I think, would be I would start building a readers list much sooner. And there's so many ways they can do it. Just simple things like with social media following, or getting groups, or writing a short story and getting people to join a mailing list to sign up for the short story. There's loads of things they can do. But I think a readers list, and especially also for writers who want to get published traditionally, because a lot of publishers now, they want to see that the writer has a following. And I know, some publishers who've said they've taken on a book which has had a very, very good positive, potential career, that writer and the book. But then at the last minute, it's not published, and the publishing deal falls through because they don't have a reader platform. They don't have enough people that the publishing house could say, well, we'll promote it to our lot of people, and we'll put this much money behind it. But we also want to see that you as a writer are going to be sharing your story. And so I think probably building a readers list much earlier is probably I think it would have been so much easier if I had that. Now I know all the lessons I've learned for promoting a book. I think I would have started much sooner, on trying to get a readers list. But I think that's just what I've learned. I think, it's a hindsight thing. I think, various writers might have something different to say. And also a lot of writers don't think about that so early. And I didn't think about that so early, even though I was in online marketing, and I was a PR for books. So that's just my own, opinion.
Yeah, yes, you're right. I agree. But thank you for the offer. I would like that. Then I can send it out to the people.
Yeah, I'll email it to you.
Thank you very much. So finally, what does the future hold for Paula Sheridan and for Paula Wynne?
Well, for Paula Sheridan, there's, the Page Turner Awards. And as I was saying earlier, very exciting. Hopefully we're going to have another very exciting year already. I think it's going to be, because we've got such fantastic judges like yourself and all of our other judges, and we've got such fantastic prizes. And I think for Paula Wynne, more books when I can get time to write, because of course I'm juggling, as we were talking about earlier, that whole juggle struggle. I'm also toying with a new series of books which I might write under the name of Paula Sheridan, my real name. And I'm also looking at the moment, I'm looking at writing my trilogy, the Torquil trilogy. I'm looking at writing that as a TV series, and then possibly the story as it is now published, putting that into a TV series, and then maybe adding on to it, because I think there's a lot that I can do with it if I could find the time to write. But if I ever do get it as a TV series, then hopefully, I can expand. And that particular character I was telling you about from 1492, who had a little, something going on with Christopher Columbus, and then later met, Queen Isabella. I think she could have loads of adventures. There's lots of stuff that she could do. And, a series, a series with her as a historical fiction, as a historical character, and then also the modern character running alongside it, who connects. I'd like to be able to get that as a TV series, but of course that's very hard. But hopefully I can put it in front of some of the production companies, especially some of the judges that we've got. Hopefully I can put it in front of them. Yeah, fingers crossed. But so there's lots going on for both Paula Wynne and Paula Sheridan.
That's brilliant. So I want to thank you, Paula. I want to say how much I have enjoyed meeting and talking with you, even though it is via Zoom. It's been very enlightening, and I hope the listeners have discovered something new about you, the writer, and also learned more about your writing. And we'll also now look with interest at the 2021 Page Turners Awards. If you want to know more about the Page Turners Awards, as I said, just have a look on the website. I'll be putting all the links on. I'll be putting it on social media and everywhere else. Once again, Paula, thank you so much for being my first interviewee for 2021. It's been a joy.
Thank you so much for having me, Anne. It's been wonderful, and all the memories we both created, all of these things that are coming back to us. It's been fun talking to you. It's been a joy, because it's lovely to talk about writing. I think you, very much like me, you have an absolute love of writing and an obsession for beautiful stories and helping writers to improve writing. So it's been wonderful, and thank you so much for having me as your first guest. Lovely.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anne, thank you.